Margrethe of Denmark has decided to go out 2023 with a bang by officially announcing that she is abdicating the throne after 52 years. This is huge news, especially because Queen Margrethe has said in other interviews that she always had planned to go the Queen Elizabeth route and die on the throne. So when she gave her New Year's Eve address this year, people were shocking. It was blowing up all over Twitter and the news that she was saying that, well, she's going to abdicate in favor of her son in 2 weeks. Yes, in 2 weeks, we will have King Frederick and Queen Mary of Denmark. And I have to say right now, guys, I am ecstatic about that. That is so awesome. We also have Crown Prince Christian. But what does this mean not only for Denmark, but with the broader royal fold? Because I think we're going to start seeing a trend coming again and again, especially as the older generation of royals is starting to really get up there in years and are deciding between their health and the throne, because I think that's really what's going on here. And we also have some really interesting news that perhaps this has been in the work for well over a year. So we will go into all of these details because I am so excited and I can't wait to see all the Danish royal tiara collection on Queen Mary. Cannot wait for that. It's going to be so exciting. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network, my name is Brittany. Just real quick, if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, that would be fantastic. I cover much royal news all over Europe. And I also have a newsletter that I'll get back up in the new year. I have a fashion channel where I go over all the tiaras, including the top 10 tiara moments from this year. And one of them was related, actually 2 of them were related to Denmark, which has a lovely tiara collection. And I also have an upcoming trip to Scotland. So if you guys are interested in that, feel free to sign up. We will be going all over the lovely Scottish countryside in Edinburgh and up to the Isle of Skye. So you'll get a great overview of the whole country. And I also have a sponsorship with Anna Lucia Diamonds. I have my studs in here that I keep in all the time. Both of these I just absolutely love. I also have my stud necklace. So we are on trend for tonight. And I have a sparkly top because I felt like it was kind of New Year's Eve, and honestly I haven't felt that good this week, and so this is my first video in a bit. I'm like, can I get the energy to get up and do this? I think I can, because this again is hugely exciting and shocking, because Queen Margrethe has told us that she did not plan to abdicate. She was going to go the Queenie route and just reign on until the day she died. And I think her health, life circumstances, and just the reality of being a person on the throne in your 80s and 90s is really starting to dawn on her. And what's really interesting too is that some people have speculated that this started happening, this whole springboard started happening after the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, who left really a bit of a mess in the UK in a lot of ways in regards to Prince Andrew and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. She did not make a definitive plan about what Charles should do with them. She sort of left it to Charles, kind of this up in the air type thing. And especially when it comes to Charles and Harry and Meghan, he just doesn't seem to know quite what to do with them, because he wants to leave the door open for communication with his other son and his family, yet at the same time they use that to badger and tarnish the reputation of the throne that Charles currently sits on. And it seems like the crown is constantly trying to catch up to the latest antics of Harry and Meghan. You also just have Andrew, who's just kind of waffling out there without a plan, without a goal. So when Queen Margrethe came to Queen Elizabeth's funeral, she was very much a friend of Queen Elizabeth. I'm sure she was watching those whole proceedings going, yeah, I guess I gotta think too about what legacy I'm leaving to my family. Not just only the crown, but what internal family dynamics do we need to address before I go on and perhaps pass away, because I don't want to leave all the problems to my son to solve. And so actually, when it came to the new year in 2023, we had an announcement that the children of the Queen's younger son, so that's Prince Joachim and his wife Marie, and his previous wife, Alexandra, all their children would be retitled from princes and a princess to counts and a countess. Obviously, they were not very pleased with this announcement, his other son and family, but this was something that she had decided, and it just made a lot of sense in that particular moment. Because as Joachim and his family especially have been living in France and now in the United States, they're further removed from the throne. And some of this was by design. There had been a lot of speculation that perhaps Joachim and his wife were sort of pushed out of Denmark in order to more well-established establish it for Crown Prince Frederick and Crown Princess Mary and their children, because the reality of royalty is right now is that because of the long life expectancies, you really don't need 12 attachees to the throne. You really need just the main line of succession. And so most monarchies are now streamlining who gets a title. So most of the time, the titles of the children who are the second born of the king. So in case of Sweden, we have obviously Prince Carl Philip and Princess Madeline. Their children were stripped of their his and her royal highnesses. In Norway, the woman who will be the future queen, Ingrid Alexandra, is styled Her Royal Highness. Her younger brother is styled His Highness. And in Denmark, Prince Joachim, who has 4 children, they were all princes and princess, and they were renamed to counts and countess because they really just won't have any future role within the monarchy. And Britain really should have done the same thing, especially when it came to Harry and Meghan. Obviously, you have to issue letters of patents, and there are all sorts of things that you have to do. But the streamlining everybody's going in, which is just mainly focusing on the main line, I think is how Europe is going. And so Queen Margrethe, after Queen Elizabeth's funeral, she's watching this chaos unfold with Harry and Meghan and all this speculation and everything. And she's like, Now, I love my grandchildren and I love my second-born son, and they're a lot less obnoxious than Harry and Meghan. In fact, I would say they probably don't really cause any trouble, really. But she's thinking, you know what? I don't want to have my son maybe make this choice. I'm going to make this choice. And so she made that choice last year. And then there was also a period of time last year, and I don't remember the exact dates, where apparently Mary was officially made a regent. She could be a regent in the place of Queen Margrethe, which is sort of rare because in the UK we have councillors of state, and they're all within the main line of succession except for Queen Camilla. And so Catherine is not a councillor of state, even though she's a Princess of Wales, because she's not a blood royal, whereas Harry and Andrew technically are. We also have Beatrice, and I think Edward and Anne have also been added to that list officially because it just encompasses the first 6 in the line of succession who are of an adult age, which would include Beatrice and Andrew and Harry. So adding Crown Princess Mary as regent was kind of another indicator that, you know, Margrethe was moving in this direction. She also had back surgery in February, and it looks like she's in increasingly amount of pain. She uses a cane to walk, and yes, she can get all dolled up in all her jewelry, but I think also too, she's just sort of struggling to get around, and she's 83 now. She's been a chain smoker her whole life. We have very few royals who smoke and tiaras, and she is definitely one of them. Like most of the time we saw that perhaps maybe in the 50s and 60s and 40s and 30s when smoking was a little bit more socially acceptable. Now that it's sort of a bit more rare, especially in the States. And Europe definitely not, but in the States it's pretty rare that to see somebody, especially in a tiara, smoking is just a little weird. And there's this little clip, and I'll play it for you here because it's very cute.
Honestly, I do smoke, and people know I smoke, and I don't pretend not to, so at least I'm not a hypocrite.
I love her. She's like, I'm not a hypocrite because I don't say I smoke, and I declare it out loud. And I'm like, good for you, Margrethe, because a lot of celebrities smoke, but they probably tell you how health conscious they are, and yet they still smoke. So I appreciate Queen Margrethe for being clear about her stance there. But as she's getting on in age, she's like, you know what? Do I really want to spend the rest of my life getting all dolled up for these state occasions? I can't visit other countries really anymore. Everybody has to come to me. And you see the difference in how different royal families are engaging in other countries depending on the youth of the ruler. So when it comes to the Netherlands, we see King Wilhelm Alexander and Queen Maxima out traveling quite a bit. The same with King Felipe and Queen Matilda of the Belgians. And we also see the same with King Philippe and Queen Letizia of Spain. What all those 3 monarchs have in common is that their parents are still alive. So I know Queen Beatrix's, now Princess Beatrix, the former queen, her husband has passed away. But in the other 2 cases, all parents are still alive. So technically the kings and queens of those countries could still be reigning, but they had to abdicate for voluntary reasons in the case of the Netherlands, because that has been the trend for the last 100 years or so. And then in the case of Belgium and Spain, they had to transition power for reasons of scandal. But the benefit is that you get these royals who are able to be much more engaged than some of their older peers. Juan Carlos has a hard time getting around. He usually uses canes. He's the former king of Spain. involved in a lot of controversy. I think King Albert of Belgium, or the former King Albert of Belgium, is pretty mobile. But the older you get, the harder things become. And poor King Harold of Norway. He tripped when he was on a recent visit to Denmark, and he really doesn't go anywhere now except for his Scandinavian countries, his Scandinavian brethren. So he goes to Denmark, he went to Sweden for King Carl Gustaf's Golden Jubilee, but he hasn't traveled much outside there. So ergo, Norway really can't have these big state visits to other countries now anymore. Not that they probably did a ton to begin with, because simply their monarch is unable to travel that way. And even having state functions at the palace is becoming harder. We also have Princess Astrid, who's the king's sister. She's usually now wheeled in to state functions. And that's not to say that older people can't have a wonderful role within the leadership of their country. Of course they can. But I think the benefit that we're seeing anymore is that because of the longevity and the long lives people are leading, that sometimes at some point you can make the choice to say, you know what? I want to have a little less responsibility and give some of the burden of the crown to somebody who is younger and who is able to go out and do so much more on the international stage than I can at this point in my life. Queen Margrethe is also very, very artistic, so she participated in this film. She designed sets and costumes and so many different things, and it's really amazing to see somebody who has that much creative talent compared to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who went to Hollywood and have done diddly squat and displayed no level of creativity whatsoever. She is very much involved and very interested in the arts. And so now that she is 83, maybe she'll live to 85. She can spend her last 2 years, I mean, she could live well beyond that, but she can spend her last 2 years enjoying these other projects that she does without the weight of also having to be queen, because she has a son who is 55, who is more than able to do the things that she can't. And so I think this is very exciting. I think this is a trend we'll see more and more. The next abdication, I would guess, would happen would be King Harold of Norway. King Harold, I feel like every couple of months we get news that he is in the hospital with some sort of illness or infection. He's obviously having a really, really hard time getting around anymore. He's using canes, and also at the Swedish Golden Jubilee, there was actually a chair brought out for him to sit in. And so I could definitely see him giving his throne over to his son, Crown Prince Haakon, and his wife has a lot of health struggles too. She has chronic pulmonary fibrosis, but he is 50 now. Both of his children are 18. And so I think he is more than able to take that position. And in Sweden, I don't know if we'll see a abdication, because King Carl Gustaf, as far as I can tell, is in pretty good health. So I don't see him getting to that point, but his wife is a couple years older than him. Maybe he starts to develop some health troubles. And so he decides, you know what, I'm kind of done. I'm kind of ready to give this to Crown Princess Victoria, who is much beloved and well able to take over this role. And the other thing I forgot to mention in terms of Denmark is that Prince Christian just turned 18 this year. So this is the oldest child of Crown Prince Frederik and Crown Princess Mary. And so he will soon become Crown Prince Christian. And what is interesting to consider as well is that apparently they had announced that he would go ahead and start taking a bit of that salary, even though he'll go to school. He'll start taking a bit of that salary from the state that he would get as a future heir, which was a little unusual because Princess Catherine Amalia of the Netherlands had decided not to take it. So did Ingrid Alexander, I believe, as well. And it makes sense in the case of Catherine Amalia because she's in school, her parents are younger, and so they are very active within the royal sphere. They're in their 50s. But Christian was a bit of a surprise, but that's because now he is transitioning into that period of power. And so there will be a transition. And because there's not as many people to take on the roles, you have basically Crown Prince Frederik and Crown Princess Mary. Queen Margrethe will probably do still events here and there. Christian will have to take up a bit more. In the Netherlands, a similar situation, but one of the king's brothers, he has two, one of them sadly passed away, but his other brother still engages in some royal engagements. And so you are able to have a bit of that help and support. And you also still have Princess Beatrix, the former queen, who does things from time to time as well. But this gives Margrethe an opportunity to spend time with her grandchildren, really be able to relax and not have the burden of the crown be on her head quite so much. And again, I really hope this is a trend we see start happening in the UK. Now, I don't think Charles will do it unless circumstances change, but I would love to see this a tradition that Prince William or eventually King William starts, is that he gets to a particular age and he goes, you know what, I've done everything I've wanted to do, or I feel like it's time we need a transition here. And so I will give the throne to my son, Prince George. So I imagine we will see this in the UK here before too long, and perhaps in the rest of Europe as well, because again, I feel like we are already seeing the benefits of that transition of power when it happens much younger. King Charles is already in his mid-70s, and although he is able to travel, I think traveling long distances is much harder for him. It's much easier for Catherine and William. Not saying that Charles should abdicate at all, but I already see how having a younger monarch is able to allow for the monarchy to have a more active role in some ways. Although Queen Margrethe, she was very, very active, not to say that. And I think this is a reflection of how times have changed, because Queen Margrethe came to the throne quite young. She's reigned for 52 years. She's 83, so she came to the throne at 31. King Carl Gustaf was in his mid-20s because, well, it was different in Denmark than it was in Sweden, because in Sweden, King Carl Gustaf's father actually passed away when he was a child. So by happenstance, he actually became king after his grandfather, not his father. And so there wasn't that buffer for him. And so in the case of Queen Margrethe, her father died quite young, same with Queen Elizabeth II. And that was obviously more common, but as medical technology has improved, we've seen a longer longevity. And sometimes at some point, I just wonder, it's like, are you really enjoying being king or queen anymore? Or is it starting to become a bit more challenging? And it might be time to let the crown go to somebody else. I think this is an exciting development. I'm debating whether or not it would be worthwhile to go to Denmark to see this. It is a very small, like they just basically appear on the balcony. But if there are other events surrounding it, I'm very interested in that. And air flight is very, very cheap to Denmark right now. It's like super cheap. Even with points, I like have to pay almost nothing for it, which is pretty incredible. So I'm sort of debating whether or not I want to do that, because I just would think it's very exciting, but I more want to see like a gala event or something. And I would also want to make sure that I could get some press credentials for that. And so guys, let me know what you think of this breaking news. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll be doing a video right after this about Harry and Meghan and their disastrous, awful, no good, very bad year. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.